What's going on, everybody? This Afro Think Tank. Black Man says the Afro-American, and by Afro-American I mean all the African diaspora in the Americas, okay? In the Americas, we're the most genetically diverse group of Africans on the planet, right? Which is true. But the way he put it, he said our DNA is our hardware and our ethnicity is our software. That makes total sense. I love the way the gentleman put it, because our DNA is our hardware, like your computer, right? The solid structure of what makes you, right? And then you have your ethnicity, right, which is your software. Software can be programmed, right? Your ethnicity, you know, the things you believe, the language you speak, the cultures that you practice, those are all programs, right, within your hardware. So at the end of the day, you're an African, all right? That's your hardware. Your hardware is you being an African, all right? DNA, you can't change that. Your lineage is African, all right? Now your software, right, depending on where your hardware resides, has been uploaded with various different types of software that, you know, make up your ethnicity, right? The language you speak, what you practice, right? And I think that's a good way to break it down for those who can't tell the difference between race, ethnicity, nationality. You know, and I guess you would say nationality would be, if ethnicity is your software, I would say your nationality would be the desk that your hardware is sitting on. So you got the computer, which is your DNA, right? That's your hardware. You got the computer and the monitor. That's your DNA, your Africanness. And then you got the software that's been uploaded to it, right? Which is your ethnicity, your race, your language, your culture, right? Then you got the nationality, all right, which is also the desk, the table, the building it's sitting in, right? Where you plug it up at, right? That's where you plug up the power to get everything going. Right? And I think that's a good analogy, and I love the way he broke it down. So I just wanted to bring that to you guys so you can, you know, help disseminate this information for those that, you know, decide they want to remain ignorant. Anyway, you guys tell me what you think in the comment section. It's time for Think Tank. Learn something, teach something. I'm out.
African Americans and other members of the African diaspora who were victims of the transatlantic slave trade are the most diverse people on the planet, both from a DNA standpoint and an ethnicity standpoint. Think of DNA as being the hardware and ethnicity as being the software. Let's look at the DNA first. Populations in Africa have the oldest, deepest, and widest variety of DNA on planet Earth. But starting about 400 years ago, because of the transatlantic slave trade, these ancient African populations were combined with European populations and Native American populations. Because 400 years is a very short time from an evolutionary standpoint, it created a uniquely layered genome that doesn't exist anywhere else on the planet. All African Americans, and I do mean all African Americans, descended from American slavery, have some amount of European ancestry in them. On average, between 13 and 20%. Of course, some have less, some have more. You throw in on top of that the Native American ancestry, and this makes African Americans and other members of the African diaspora who are descended from victims of the transatlantic slave trade the most diverse people on the planet. Now, from an ethnicity standpoint, remember the software, these African groups that were brought over during the transatlantic slave trade weren't one monolithic group. I think people tend to think that sub-Saharan Africa is just one giant monolithic group, but that's not true. There are thousands of different ethnicities with their own set of customs, cuisines, languages, religions, concepts on art and agriculture. So when these groups were brought to the Americas during the transatlantic slave trade, suddenly you had hundreds of different ethnicities thrust together, creating the most diverse group of people in the entire world. They all synthesized and started trading all their different customs, religions, languages, cuisines, and concepts on everything from agriculture to music and so on. And that unique cultural adaptability became the engine for modern global culture. So when I say that African Americans are the most diverse people on the planet, they bring with them a uniquely layered, multi-continental genetic history and culture which is forged from hundreds of different traditions that ultimately reshaped the modern world. So this means that African Americans are perfectly suited for survival, adaptation, and innovation. That's right, this means you.
Freckles are African. The gene started in West Africa, and they really don't want to hear that. The MC1R gene. Same gene behind red hair, same gene behind freckles, and it traces straight back to Africa. Freckles are clusters of concentrated melanin, the skin producing bursts of pigment in response to sunlight. That's not a European feature. That's an African gene doing exactly what it was designed to do, reacting to the sun, the way it's been reacting for tens of thousands of years. Ancient West African populations carried the widest diversity of the MC1R gene on Earth. More variations than any European population. Ever. That means the gene pool that created freckles didn't start in Ireland. It started in Africa and traveled north with every migration. But they put freckles on postcards of Irish girls, made it cute, made it Celtic, made it white. Never once mentioned where the gene actually came from. The skin that freckles the most is the skin with the least melanin. The protection got stripped away and the gene started misfiring in patches.
I'm going to say this for the slow people in the back, because I still got people commenting on my videos in which I told you Black Americans, the people who consider yourself Black Americans, that you are African. I still got y'all commenting on those videos saying that you're not African. And so I'm going to take a deep breath because I know that many of y'all had IEPs. Okay. And I know that many of y'all are slow. And I know that many of y'all have no idea who you are. And that is by design. Okay. But so let's walk through this together. You're calling yourself a Black American. Why? Because you're saying that your ancestry only goes far back as America. Okay. Okay. Well, this is something that you did not learn in school. Or maybe you did, depending on what school you went to. But clearly, most of you did not learn this in school. The melanated people who were in America before Christopher Columbus ever set foot here, guess where they came from, you guys? Take a wild guess. Africa. Yes. So you're saying that you're Black American because you identify with the Americans who were here before Christopher Columbus. But if you do your research, you will find that those people walked here and came here on boats. From where? Africa. That is why you are classified as an African American, because the people who enslaved your ancestors knew exactly who you were. Okay? They knew exactly who you were and they knew exactly where you came from. You don't know. And you might have beef with Africans, people who grew up on the continent of Africa, but do not let that cut you off from the truth about your ancestry. If you go and take a DNA test, you will trace the African genetics back to somewhere where, say it with me, in Africa. So just because you didn't grow up on the continent of Africa does not mean you're any less of an African than somebody who did. Genetically speaking, we are damn near the same. And that's something that you Black Americans need to take the time to research and understand, because it will free you from living in delusion.
Some call it nappy. Some call it nappy. Some call it nappy. I call it her crown. When she walk in the room, watch the whole thing shut down. Used to let them tell her she should wear it laid down. Now she wear it how she want, and she wear it proud. Some call it nappy. I call it her crown. God took his time when he put that down.
As someone who's been living outside the US for almost 2 years now, I can so definitively see Black American culture as a blueprint. Obviously, I already knew this being in the US, but leaving the US made me see how this manifests on an international scale. This manifests in music. I go to the gym, they're always playing 2000s hip-hop. 99% of the time, it's Black artists. Same with fashion, streetwear, that's Black attire. Speech patterns as well. But yeah.
What is that? What is that? I don't know. What is that? That's okay. Oh, it's a goblin and it's nasty.
Free Sudan! Boycott diamonds and gold! Free Sudan. Boycott diamonds and gold. We most definitely cannot forget about the people of Sudan.
Thanks for watching Afro Think Tank. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And follow me on Substack and Patreon for more content. Remember, it's Pan-Africanism or nothing.